Minister back, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I first of all start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Caerphilly for bringing forward this bill and the numerous campaigners who have been pressing this issue for many years. As we've heard, strategic litigation against public participation, or SLAPPs, is an abuse of our courts and of our laws by corrupt individuals seeking to stifle free speech and a free press, two of the very linchpins of our democracy. And if I may just refer to what the Honourable Member for Popular and Limehouse said, I appreciate that the issue, I can't talk about the specific case, but I can reassure her that this bill widens the scope from beyond what was in the Economic Transparency Bill and now talks about all kinds of behaviours. I'm more than happy to discuss the specific issues with the Honourable Member for Caerphilly, because it is his bill, to make sure that the specific issues she wishes to see covered, to see what we can do to either reassure her or to accommodate her. If I may, Mr. Speaker, we know that this issue became increasingly pressing when the Russian oligarchs and their allies of Putin used this process for their own ends. Alongside them, we saw behaviour by multinational corporations or disreputable landlords to use and abuse our processes. SLAPPs must always be taken seriously and tackled swiftly. And in this House, we have the ability and the privilege to ensure that abuses such as these are addressed head-on. This House stands for free speech and for holding the powerful to account, and for always seeking to ensure that the best interests of the public, in the widest sense, are being served by the law. SLAPP-style litigation is an abuse of power designed to inhibit public interest investigations and reporting. The harm that SLAPPs cause is not only that they stifle public comment by forcing its removal or editing it, they also discourage journalists, academics and campaigners from investigating issues in the first place, leaving matters of public interest undiscovered and the British public in the dark. In this way, the effect of SLAPPs is far more pernicious. We cannot sit by and allow our media to feel that some people and organisations cannot be subject to scrutiny just because they have unlimited financial firepower to mobilise aggressive legal tactics. And to quote Andrew Galizia, whose mother Daphne, a Maltese investigative journalist, was murdered in 2017, the aim of these lawsuits is to deprive the target of time and resources and deter others from taking up the same story. His mother was subject to 43 lawsuits at the time of her death. Whether a claim is aimed at an author, an academic, a journalist or a private individual, this abuse of the law to muzzle the free press must not go unchecked. We will not allow our justice system to be abused. And in our response to the government's original call for evidence, we said that while there were powers enabling courts to strike out cases as an abusive process, these powers needed to be strengthened to counteract the very sophisticated but very aggressive actions brought by SLAPP claimants. The House will be aware of some high-profile cases that have shone a light on SLAPPs, cases such as that brought by the British journalist Tom Burgess, who members have already mentioned, who was sued for libel in the High Court by ENRC, an oligarch-owned mining company, following his publication of Kleptopia, How Dirty Money is Conquering the World. There were multiple claims issued against Tom Burgess by ENRC, targeting him as an individual author rather than his publisher. These claims concerned his tweets, his podcasts and his articles which mentioned his book. This case was dismissed early on. The statements complained of were found not to be defamatory, and Mr. Burgess was vindicated. But how many more cases do not reach our courtrooms due to the intimidatory tactics and costs run up by aggressive claimants before proceedings are even brought, which I think is the point raised by the Honourable Member for Hammersmith. If I could just address a couple of points that he raised at this juncture. We have continued and will continue to engage the SRA. As the Honourable Member mentioned, warning notices have already been issued. The fines for behaviour or misbehaviour by solicitors' firms have been increased. And of course, that pre-action behaviour is a legitimate cause of concern. and that the government will continue to engage with the regulator to see how that can be further addressed. And as so many people have volunteered to be on the Bill Committee, I'm sure that's something that we can look at with the indulgence of the Honourable Member for Caerphilly. We'll be able to look at in some more depth. Mr. Deputy Speaker, there is evidence that the number of SLAPPs is increasing year on year. In 2020, there were 11 cases in the UK. In 2021, 25, and in 2022, 29. And such worrying and abusive conduct by those with deep pockets attempting to financially bully dissenting voices is unacceptable in our democracy. The courts must not be a pawn in these underhand attempts to cover up corruption and wrongdoing. SLAPPs are a modern-day struggle between David and Goliath. On one side, we have the individual journalists, academics and authors up against the extremely wealthy and wealthy individuals and corporates with unlimited resources on their side. We cannot let this type of intimidation and harassment stand. It is right that wrongdoing and dubious deals are laid bare for the world to see. And those who would expose this should not be afraid of the repercussions of doing so. And that's why the government listened and brought forward legislation in the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act of 2023 to tackle SLAPP's claims connected to financial misdeeds. This act meant we were the first country in the world to legislate against SLAPPs at a national level. And that's something that, whilst we can argue whether it was overdue, but certainly we were the first to do it, and it's something that we ought to take some pride that this legislature acted faster than most. Moving forward, that act only gave cover to a small part of the SLAPP's regime. And this act targeted only one part of economic crime. And that's why this private member's bill seeks to address the gaps, and it does make sure that the definition of SLAPPs is more comprehensive. If I may, the Honourable Gentleman raised the issue of behaviour in the test of objectivity and subjectivity. And if I may just cover off that point, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the issue of subjectivity is not unusual, and the courts do consider and will consider all evidence before it comes to an assessment, and including an explanation from the claimant as to why their claim is reasonable. And the courts, of course, are well versed in taking that information into account. If you like, the test of subjectivity or intent is not unusual and is well established in our court system. And if I could be helpful, Section 2 of the bill does actually give some specific examples of types of behaviour that would be deemed to be SLAPPs type behaviour. So there is, I believe, a careful balance between the standard practice of intent whilst tightening up some areas that would clearly give some objective guidance to the judiciary as to what is SLAPPs behaviour. This bill also, Mr. Deputy Speaker, follows on from the Economic Crime Act in terms of establishing a cost protection regime which limits the legal cost in SLAPP claims, protecting the defendant from the obscene costs run up by claimants to increase the intimidatory effect of their claim. This will also help address the glaring inequality of arms between the parties in these cases. And of course, one of the big steps forward, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the fact of the ability to have early dismissal, so that these cases don't rumble on, racking up fees, particularly for those defendants. The ability to strike out at an early stage is a big part of the armoury on cost protection. But our reforms also have to ensure there is a balance between defending people from SLAPPs type behaviour, but also ensuring that we do protect what is a fundamental part of our system, which is access to justice. And it is for the courts and judiciary to determine whether a case is a SLAPP and whether it has merit. What we have done is act to remove the level of fear and risk that these cases can engender. And the government is glad to be able to welcome and support this bill, which builds on the important progress already made. I thank the Honourable Member for Caerphilly for seizing the moment to introduce a private member's bill. And it is a really opportune time that we can continue to build on what we've done so far, but make it more comprehensive. As he has outlined so well, the government has found that the scourge of SLAPPs is, unfortunately, spreading into new subject matter areas such as sexual harassment, clinical negligence, landlord and tenant disputes. The whole purpose of this bill is to tackle behaviour. And if the behaviour, to coin a phrase, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a SLAPP. And so this is a major step forward. So that's rather clumsy English, and I'm sure Hansard will correct me, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It is the time that we legislated so that the majority of SLAPPs cases were thought to be linked to economic crime, but it's time to move on and make the definition more all-encompassing. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would like to just make sure that a couple of points raised by honourable members are covered off. My honourable friend for West Bromwich East raised the Belton case. Again, that particular case, whilst not commenting on whether that case and its specifics form part of the formation of the bill that the honourable member for Caerphilly has brought forward, all of that information in all the cases for SLAPPs form part of the call for evidence. And so I can reassure her that the activities in that particular case will have formed part of the foundation of bringing this bill forward. And if I may also cover the point raised by my honourable friend for Hayward and Middleton regarding forward shopping, that's an issue I will look at, but one I am sure he will raise in his customary fashion in the Bill Committee. But I'm sure my honourable friend for Caerphilly would urge him not to talk quite as much as he's promising to. Mr. Deputy Speaker, if I may say, it is a credit to this Parliament that members of all parties have rallied to support action on this issue and to introduce new laws that help ensure the integrity of our justice system and support the freedoms and protections that we all cherish in our society. In some ways, that private members' bill is a most fitting way of completing what the government has started. I commented that the work we're doing with the Solicitors Regulation Authority to ensure that they tighten up their regulation, and we will continue to engage with the SRA, as I've said. I'd like to pay tribute to the UK Anti-SLAPP Coalition, who have been enormously effective stakeholders that have supported the government's efforts, and I thank them for their consistent engagement and clarity on this issue. Within government, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport launched the SLAPP's task force last September with a remit to develop non-legislative recommendations to tackle SLAPPs, and good progress is being made on a number of fronts, and I thank the Secretary of State for DCMS for her tireless commitment in this regard. Internationally, the UK was represented as an expert member of the Council of Europe's Working Group on SLAPPs, which concluded its mandate in December 2023. The draft recommendation that was produced over the course of 2 years will now make its way to the Committee of Ministers, and we trust it will eventually be adopted across all 46 member states. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, the government acted last October to legislate against SLAPPs because we could not allow our courts to be abused and our legal system manipulated. That's why we are pleased to support this bill, why we will continue to make sure that those who speak out against corruption, who hold powerful to account and who guard our freedoms through their voice are protected. Finally, Mr. Deputy Speaker, may I once again thank the Honourable Member for Caerphilly for bringing forward this bill, and also the officials at the Ministry of Justice for providing all the necessary support for his bill as we move forward. Thank you.
Leader of the House, Wayne David.